Welcome to the Events Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Taylor, and each week I talk with event entrepreneurs about how they plan, promote, and run their events. We help you build your events empire by growing your business using live events. Whether you're running community meetups, conferences, trade shows, IT training, music events, or literally any type of event, we focus on finding actionable tips that you can use straight away. The podcast is sponsored by Apps Events. We produce over 300 of our own events across the globe every year, from training to conferences, and we're now sharing our expertise to a small group of event professionals. There's a couple of ways we can help you. Firstly, we can run the logistics for your event. We have a whole support team who can handle all the heavy lifting for you. We can help set up your website and agenda, liaise with your speakers, deal with the huge volume of questions you'll get from attendees. We can liaise with venues, and we can come to the event to actually run it for you on the ground. Get in touch with James at appsevents.com and we'll jump on a call to see if we can help. Secondly, I offer one-on-one coaching to help event entrepreneurs grow their events. I want you to get more attendees, produce epic events, make more money, and most importantly, to do it all with no stress. So just email me at dan@appsevents.com and we'll jump on a call. And now, onto the interview. Welcome to the podcast. Today, delighted to be talking to Damian Thompson. He is a sales expert, I guess, as a salesman himself and as a sales manager and also as a sales coach. He's done a lot of roles in everything to do with selling and teaching selling. I know him, Damian, from a group we're both in called the Dynamite Circle. I've mentioned it before. And we were just talking. I think I met you like 4 years ago, Damian, probably something like the last time in Bangkok. I think the last time you went to the conference.
Yeah, I think 2016 in Bangkok. We went every year for a while there. Got harder, obviously, with kids and that kind of thing. But yeah, it's looking forward to it coming back hopefully next year.
Sure. Yeah, I got 2 kids now. So I just took my kids to Bangkok last time, just stayed for 2 months.
But look, that's the way to do it.
Welcome to the podcast, David. It's great to have you here.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, so we were just chatting beforehand. I'd like to get into your background a bit before, because I know you've done a lot of interesting stuff. You've lived in a lot of kind of quite exciting places. I know you were in Davao for a while, which is kind of a bit like the Wild West of Philippines. So do you want to go through a bit about your background and how you ended up out in Asia and meeting a lot of the people we both know?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm a bit of a weirdo in the fact that, so I'm half Australian, half American. So mom's an Aussie, dad's a Yank. So which is interesting because, you wouldn't tell with this thick American accent and everything else. But, I mean, I kind of grew up a bit with that immigrant kind of feeling when I moved to America with an accent and, being the different one and the special one. And so I think that kind of set me up to be a little bit unique, a little different, being okay, not being part of the crowd. And then I'd go back and visit Australia every couple of years. I'd go spend, kind of summers there. And so I had this kind of passion to kind of not just be stuck in one place. And so when I was 18, I went to college, then dropped out to join the Army during Desert Shield. So I spent a couple of years overseas doing that and really kind of put in this idea that I really love this, we didn't call it location independence back then, but this idea of, building a life around being able to pick up and move every 12, 18, 24 months or whatever. And so inadvertently, I don't think it wasn't that clear at first, but when I started getting into the kind of career field, I'm a salesperson. I love sales. I started selling in high school, door to door sort of thing. And even though I thought I was going to focus on computer science as what I went to school for, because I'm a bit of a nerd too, what turned out was I really enjoyed selling the software more than building the software. And so kind of got involved in that, and then kind of fell into this career where I was an entrepreneur, even though we didn't call it that back in the days, of big companies. So for example, I went to Australia in 1998 and I was the first employee for one of their software lines called Network Associates, for Sniffer Technologies, which was a network bandwidth testing tool. And then essentially what would happen is every 2 years or so, I'd be dropped into some new country where there was some, small, tiny existing relationship. And then my job was to build a team, build a sales team, grow revenue and kind of build essentially these little mini businesses around the world in these kind of countries that weren't America, because these are American companies for the most part. So
you'd go and live in the country or the one you opened.
Yeah. So I moved to Australia. I was in Sydney for a couple of years, then got a job with Trend Micro. And they moved me down to New Zealand and I was the kind of the country manager down there. And then went back to Australia to kind of fix the Australian enterprise business, and then went to India for about a year. And so essentially it was, hey, this is a region that's underserved or, needs a turnaround, and let's send Damian to go do that. And so I kind of got this career doing that and loved it, was passionate about it, was something I was really fan of. And at the time I had this real clear goal. I wanted to be VP of worldwide sales for a Fortune 500 software company by the time I was 40. That was my goal. It's probably the clearest goal I've ever had in my life. And I drove towards it. And as I got closer and closer to it, I realized I didn't want it, right? And so I didn't want that job. I realized I didn't like working in big companies. I didn't like the farther up I got, the less authentic I felt you could be. The less, the more rules got involved, the more it was a lot of corporate speak and all this kind of nonsense and politics and all the stuff I like selling to, but didn't like living day to day. And so I burned the suit and tie in 2010 and said, hey, I'm gonna go be a weirdo. And I'd been listening to Dan and Ian on the Lifestyle Business podcast. Chris Ducker at the time had Outsource for the Philippines was his podcast, and so I said I'm gonna go to the Philippines and figure out how to build this kind of back office sales outsourcing kind of service. And so moved to the Philippines in early 2011, and then spent the next couple of years there figuring out what I could and couldn't do online. At the time, it was the idea of kind of being like traveling the world and working was happening. But running business was still pretty hard. It was hard to kind of convince someone, hey, jump on a Skype call, which was really the only kind of voice you could do online. And hey, let me, build a sales team for you from the other side of the world. When people were still really, in love with their office space and this idea that you had to manage by walking around. And I sell to the tech space, and so in that space a lot, there's all these really bad principles that Silicon Valley created that that were just really rock cold. And so I couldn't figure it out. So I started selling services, right? Saying, hey, I'm going to build some service agencies, find needs in the market, and then but the idea being grow them big enough to build sales teams. The thing I'm passionate about.
Super question, because obviously I'm to the Philippines. Jane and Glenn, we've been with me for like 8 years now in Cebu, so I go to Cebu every year.
Yep.
And you ended up in Davao, which I want to visit. I've always been fascinated by Davao because it seems like such kind of an edgy place. But like, how did you get there? Was that a decision? And did you? A second question as well. Did you set up a whole company there? Did you go for the whole hassle of setting up a Philippines?
No. Yeah. Great questions. Yeah. So I'll slow down. So I get to the Philippines in 2011. The whole gig was, and this is through the Tropic MBA guys, through a guy named Sean, who owned a resort in a small little island south of Manila. Yeah. So the goal was at the time, Sean was kind of running this resort, but wasn't very tech savvy. So I moved into WordPress and added him to Agoda and all this kind of stuff. But the idea was I'd spend 2 or 3 hours a day working on his business and then figure out what I wanted to do in my business. Right. And so it was a great model for that. So I spent a couple months there, and that was fine. But when it was time for me to move on, I didn't want to stay in Puerto Galera. It's a bad internet, hot, all that kind of stuff. And so I actually moved to Cebu was the first place I moved. Chris Ducker was still there at the time. Had known Chris kind of online at the time. And so moved there to kind of check him out a bit, as well as Louis Corti, who was a DCer that I was kind of traveling through Asia with. We just decided we want to check out Cebu. Went to Cebu. Liked it, ended up getting a client while I was in Cebu where I was working nights. I think I told this earlier. So they were a US-based company. And so I was working nights. And so just, you feel like a zombie. I'd work till 6 o'clock in the morning, go to McDonald's to get my chicken and rice for 50 pesos and, and kind of my breakfast every morning, and then come back and, try to do any kind of, normal hours for me, try to do whatever, daily tasks I had to do. It just felt like I wasn't getting much done. So I was really kind of depressed, to be honest. This is around Christmas time of that 2011. And Dan and Ian, Dan specifically, kept saying, look, you got to go to Davao. There's these 2 guys down there, Justin and Joe from the AdSense flippers at the time, who are doing some really cool, interesting things. You'd love them. There are people, you got to go check them out. And frankly, I'm a bit of a hipster in that if everyone likes something, I don't like it automatically, right? So it's just kind of my default state a little bit. And so I'm cynical, I guess. And so I've been hearing these great things about Davao from a lot of my friends that were going down there, but they were more the kind of travel guys, the travel bloggers, the party lifestyle kind of people. And I was like, yeah, I'm not really looking for a party lifestyle. I mean, I'll find a party wherever I am. And so I'm really looking to build something. I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to, build my little empire online. And so, but eventually, getting a little lonely around Christmas time, I reached out to Joe and said, hey, Dan says I got to come down, want to check you out. He said, sure, come on down, buddy, no problem. We'll hook you up. And so he came down. At the time, Joe was working on a great story about Davao. I'll tell you in a second about he was getting fit for a boxing match. And so he was working out. So I started hanging out with his roommate, who's also his business partner, Justin. And we just hit it off like a house on fire. Just, he's ex-Navy, I was ex-Army. We had a lot of same worldviews. We had a lot of same business views. And we just kind of spent all day talking. Joe and Justin were lovely. Actually let me stay with them for about a month, which was great to get my feet. And so just ended up falling in Davao, not for Davao so much, but for the community. it was them. There was Daniel. There's a couple other people down there. Dan used to pop in all the time. And so it was just a really good fraternal community of people trying to figure out how to make this online business thing work. Right. And so, but yeah, Davao was great. And so what I loved about the Philippines, a couple things. The first is, and this is going to sound, cliche or, racist, I guess, a little bit, but positively racist, is that the nicest people in the world. Like, I mean, I tell you, I've not been to a place where there's, oh my God, like just the nicest, sweetest people across the board that I've met are Filipinos. And, there's a reason why I think in America, we don't get these numbers wrong, but it's something like this. It's like they're less than 0.5% of the population, but they're like 10% of the nurses in America are Filipino descent. Like there's just something about like the caregiving nature. Like culturally, it seemed to be like they take care of the family, they have extended families. There's also, I love that about that. That was one thing. The other is, it is a bit of the wild, wild East, in that you can kind of do whatever you want, right? If you've got, nothing negative or bad, but that kind of, you can do a lot of things you couldn't do anywhere else as long as you're keep a positive attitude and you're willing to pay for it. So for example, two of my friends, Joe and Daniel, had an exhibition boxing match where I got to be an MC and actually do the ring announcing and announce. And we had the Filipino national boxing team. We were there. I mean, the whole thing was a couple $100. We ran out this huge gym. We had advertising. We were on the radio. Like we had a couple hundred Filipino locals came in, they could watch for free, and it was just amazing. So we literally had a little boxing exhibition.
I remember seeing it online, and Joe he got in amazing shape, didn't he? I mean, he got properly
amazing shape. Well, I think Joe's a lot like me in that we need goals to. I know I'm out of shape and 20 pounds too fat right now, but who cares, right? But if I had to go, get into a ring with somebody, if I was wrestling again or something like that, then absolutely I'd get in shape. But those kind of things, events, or like island hopping. For $100, you'd take a boat all day and you're spear fishing and going from island to island. It's like there's some magic about these kind of underserved developing countries that you can, if you're willing to live, like you can really have a really full, rich life, which is again why I loved it so much. Ended up leaving just as I kind of outgrew it a bit, and again was looking to kind of grow this business. And at the time, Saigon was the new hotness. So moved to Saigon, looking for, again, I come from this kind of startup-y software background. And so I had gone there and there was something going on there, but it still wasn't enough. And then landed a gig kind of as a consultant, building an inside sales team for an Australian company, actually, and moved to Austin, Texas, and was there for about a little over a year building that. So, but, the long and short of it, I've had a bunch of different companies, a bunch of different ways of offering it. But my thing is, I help non-sales founders, generally technical or creative people, learn how to create systems or processes for them to sell better at first, but more importantly, to build the foundation to hire a team eventually to do the selling and support and what I call revenue team. So lead gen, sales, and then customer success. Excuse me. So, that offering has changed quite a bit, but the fundamentals haven't, which is, I believe that sales is the most important, kind of function of a business. Without sales, there's no revenue. Without revenue, there's no business. But it's one that most entrepreneurs are like not the least likely to learn, right? They're afraid of it. They don't like it. They have a negative connotation to it. So a lot of time I'm the head shrink where I've got to kind of convince them that sales is not a 4-letter word, right? That it is actually an important part of their business and set up processes. But more importantly, that if you want to go from being a, kind of self-employed to an actual business owner, you need other people delivering your service and you need other people selling your service, right? Sure. Those are kind of the two sides. Yeah.
It's true. I mean, when I started my kind of entrepreneurial journey, which was, I guess, I was a contractor. And then when I started actually my own business, which was 2004, so 16 years ago, we're recording this 2020. I had a business partner in my first business, still a good friend of mine. And like, he just couldn't sell. And so I became the sales guy because he couldn't do it. And,
right.
And I was, I'd kind of sold in like, I was a contractor. I was always selling, trying to get new contracts. And I actually quite liked it, and I still sell in this business. I think sales is one of those things where when you have a bit of success, you're like, yeah, and you get fired up and then you do more and more. But if you go through a period without any success, like in the beginning, it's just like soul crushing,
Yeah, I think Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it definitely. I think that this idea of a natural born salesperson is nonsense, right? It's a skill. It's a profession you have to get good at. But what I will say is, personality type wise, if you enjoy endorphin rushes, then I'm an endorphin rush kind of guy. It's something I like. It's highs and lows. It's a roller coaster, all that kind of stuff. But I find a lot of times that entrepreneurs who don't think they like it a lot more than they think they do, because I think part of the reason we're drawn to entrepreneurship is this idea that we can do something better than someone else, or that we're kind of don't want a boss, or we want to do our own way. But also part of us likes that roller coaster. Part of us likes the
Yeah.
highs and lows. Part of us likes the feeling, right? Like there's something to that. I think that there's underneath the psychological stuff. And I think that sales offers that on smaller bite-sized doses, right? So, hey, you win, you lose, and it feels good. I mean, I've been selling for 30 plus years. I still get a rush when someone says yes to me. I still feels good when someone says yes, right? It just does, right? And so what's happened over time is I've learned how to make the no's not hurt so bad, right? And so I think that's kind of the key is let the yeses still feel good, right? And the no's not feel so bad, right? And if you get to that point, then I think things are, you're feeling much better. So
definitely. And I want in a minute get into some of the stuff about selling for events, but I guess you can give me your opinion on this. I mean, one thing I saw was like when I was selling 2004, 2005, 2006, I was cold calling all the time. That was kind of the staple of what I did. I mean, I was LinkedIn wasn't really a big thing, at least not for me. Maybe it was, but I wasn't. I mean, I was on LinkedIn, but I wasn't prospecting enough. Maybe I should have been. But
not 2004. In 2004, LinkedIn was a resume site. That's all it was. So
yeah. But I really like. But now it seems like, maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like people just don't cold call at all. It seems like it's all about creating a funnel. Am I wrong? Are people still cold calling, or has that gone?
Well, no, they're 100%. People still are. People having success still are. But you're right. People don't. So there's always an industry for charlatans to tell you not to do the thing you don't want to do, right? Whatever it is, right? Whatever it is, right? So, hey, you want to eat all the bacon you want to eat? Great. There's a diet for that. You want to eat all the sugar you want to eat? There's a diet for that. So there's a whole industry and everything about that. And so in the sales industry, historically, that's always been one, right? So even before entrepreneurship, things like, Never Cold Call Again was a famous book back 20 plus years ago when I was in sales. So, selling someone a dream of not doing the hard things is always there. Yeah. The reality is the hard things they work, right? And so I look at cold calling absolutely works if you do it right. It's hard to do, right? But you have to do it right. Here's the other thing. It's actually easier to do a lot now that, I push a button and something calls. I don't need to dial a phone. I don't need to kind of go out and do things. So there's actually, the act of it is easier. The mental aspect might be even harder, right? Because everyone's telling you you don't have to do it. You don't have to do it. You don't have to do it. And you don't have to do anything. But the challenge is that you've got the charlatans that are just willing to take your money by selling you a bill of goods that isn't real. But then you actually have like some legitimate people. So, I'm a co-founder of a company called LeadFuse. We are a B2B lead data platform. When we started, we actually did both the lead data, but also the outbound email. So you could actually automate kind of your outbound email for cold email. Because I've had nothing but success using cold email my entire career. Like, 10 years ago, I cold emailed Rob Walling. That's how now he's an investor in one of my businesses. He's been a client and everything. And so I can point to hundreds of success stories about me cold emailing. I'm still a huge fan today. However, here's what happens. Like in all things, marketers ruin everything, right? And so as soon as we make something easy to do and mass scale, it means more people do it. They do it less effectively and it becomes less effective overall. So the days of sending an email, 10 years ago, I could cold email someone and say, hey, you made a mistake on this page of your website. Here's a link to book a time with me and I'll talk to you. And I have a 10% meeting rate. Like literally 10% of people got that email, would click that and would book a meeting with me. Those days are far gone, right? I can't even get a 10% reply rate on most of these emails today. So like the efficacy of those programs changes. And so what you have to do is change with it. And so what works today in outbound is omni-channel, which is a fancy way of saying multiple touch points, right? So LinkedIn, cold email, cold call, physical mail, whatever. But like the more you can touch them across multiple different channels and multiple different messaging, around the same core concepts, is the more success you're going to have. And the easy way to think of this: if it's easy to do, everyone's doing it, and it's not very effective. If it's hard to do and you're getting results, it's probably worthwhile doing. Now you have to figure out what that looks like in your business and what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. But I would say outbound always works if you do it right. And I believe a big part of outbound is the call. But here's what I say: don't do. Don't just go put 200 phone numbers again and start banging out phone calls. Like the call should be like a planned part of your cadence. So, the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna send an email, customize, an email that's templated but still has some customization to the customer. Then once I see they've opened that email, now I know I've got a real person that's actually reading my email. Now they'll get a Loom video, which is like a recording, maybe a personalized recording, 30 seconds, 60 seconds, right? The next day I'll reach out to them to add them as a connection on LinkedIn. The next day I'll call them. The next day.
Can jump in here, Tim. You're saying a lot of so much good stuff is coming really fast. I want to jump in. Right. So are you saying a good way to do this? I'm thinking of myself. You send them an email and then you say the Loom thing. So let's say I see someone potentially a sponsor for one of my events, right? Then I make a short video, like 15 seconds, 20 seconds, a minute, whatever. And I say, hey, I've looked at your website. I've looked at what you do. Here's what we do. Here's why I think it could be a good fit. And I send them that video.
Yes. Yeah. So
that's a great idea. I've never even thought of that.
So here's how I use cold email. So the cold email tools these days. So the idea of like kind of mass sending. And so Customization is key, but like when I say customization, I mean more than just merge tags, right? I mean actually like customizing the message. However, that's hard to do at scale. So I always suggest to people at first, they do it, they hand do it, right? So and make it easy on yourself. Just set aside an hour every day, and it's just 20. I'm going to email 20 people, right? And for them, I'm going to go spend, I'm going to find 3 things in 3 minutes, 3 by 3. I'm going to go to the LinkedIn site. I'm going to find, where they're currently working, kind of what their kind of role looks like, possibly, maybe that sort of thing, and think of some sort of insight that's just specific to them. And then I'm going to email them. Now, how I would use mass tools would be, okay, I've built a list of people that match my ideal customer profile. I want to email, say 50 of them, right? Of the 50, the days of expecting, and you'll still hear people promising like 40% reply rates, it's nonsense for the most part. So expect, all I want them is to raise their hand in 2 ways. Say, A, I'm here, and B, I have some interest in what you're saying. So I send kind of an email that's like, hey, Dan, when I talk to other kind of people that are in the kind of events business, here's the 2 things they say are the biggest problem for them right now. 1, COVID has made a huge reduction in kind of in-person events, and B, trying to create value from, live events or online events, sorry, which of those A or B is important to you, and then send it off, right? Not expecting a huge response rate, but expecting to see, okay, of the 100 I sent, 40 people opened it. Okay, so I now know those 40 people are real live people, right, that are receiving my email. So that's my new subset. Then they'll get an email that says, hey, if your challenge was, hey, turning your live events online, here's a link to a resource, right? And put a hyperlink to some resource we've created for that. And the idea being, anyone that clicks on that link, essentially what they're doing is raising their hand and saying, hey, I have interest in this. I want you to sell me something yet, but I'm interested in this topic and this idea. So that person now, to me, they're going to get most of my attention. So now what I'm going to do, let's just say you clicked on a link. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to your LinkedIn page. I'm going to go to your website. I'm going to shoot a Loom video. I think it's use Loom or getloom.com. There's a bunch of them out there, Vidyard or whatever. I don't care. But the cool thing is, essentially, it takes a little tiny screen capture in the bottom corner of my face, but then it's a screen share. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you a video where I'm on your website, my little head in the bottom corner on your website. And I'm going to send to you, Dan, man, just spent a couple minutes on your website. Really love this. I've worked with my Google in the past or whatever, something specific to you, right? And say, look, here's what we do. We help companies solve problem A or problem B, right? It looks like you might have one of those problems. If you don't, that's fine. Just a quick reply to this email would be great, and we can find out whether I can send you some free resources. I'm not going to ask for a call. I'm not going to offer a free assessment or any of these kind of things that are just code for a sales call. I'm just going to kind of try to deliver value, right? And so when I send it to you, it does a bunch of things. First is, there's no way I'm sending that to anybody else but you, right? So I've already passed the human test there, right? So now everyone listening to this is probably inundated with bad emails from people that pretend to know them, or pretend that I have an answer for you and have done nothing to stand out from the crowd. I'm standing out from the crowd because I've used video, which humanizes it. I'm talking only to you, which makes it personal to you. So these are the kind of things you're doing, and that to me is what is successful. And then from there, deliver value. You reply back, yeah, I'd love to see some of that stuff. Great, send you whatever the thing is, and say, look, in 15 minutes, we'll know whether I can help you or not, right? And the best part will be at the end of 15 minutes, even if I can't help you, I'll point you in the right direction. Here's a link to book a time with me, and you'll see your meeting rates will go way up because, again, you started with value, right? I started with value. I started personalized. I wasn't just I think there's 3 sales that happen in B2B selling. The first, I ask for your time, right? That's the first sale. I got to convince you to give me some of your time. Second sale is I got to convince you to give me your attention. So not just show up, but actually pay attention to what I'm saying, or read what I ask, what I send you. And the third is money. Give me your money, right? And so we focus on that third sale a lot, right? Where the first 2 sales are actually harder, right? If you're talking to the founder of a business or the owner, maybe it matters, but everybody else, if you're talking to a VP or below, a C-suite or below, they don't really care about make money, save money, which is the B2B pitch, right? What they care about is themselves, their self-interest. How do they get measured? What does success look like for them, right? And so when we kind of, to them, their time and attention is much more valuable than money, because that money is not theirs. It's not like they're pulling out their personal credit card to slap down, right? They're writing a check with your company's money. So that's the easy part of the sale. Their time and attention is the hard part. But yet that's the part that almost all of us ask for way too early, right? With no real reason to. And we're asking it the same way that everybody else, and we're competing with everyone else. So if you're running an events business that has a real clear outcome, cool. Your competitor isn't other people that do that in your field. Your competitor is every other person that's asking for that person's time and attention. their
Sure.
family, their employees, their boss, their everything else. And so if you
Yeah.
don't stand out, you're not going to win. And that's the problem. We don't see it that way. And so I think that's one of the big mental shifts I help people have is like your your goal is to deliver value enough that you can get their time and attention. So even if they don't become customers, there's a value transaction that's happened. So, because they're the ones that'll come back to you 3 months later, 6 months later, 12 months later, or they'll recommend you to someone else. Or, hey, I was just talking to someone about this a couple months ago, and they're awesome because they didn't push to sell something when I wasn't ready and all those kind of things. So,
Yeah, yeah. And that's the other thing. I think the one thing I've been pretty good at. I mean, obviously, no one's ever perfect, but I think one of the things people undervalue is just always staying in touch with people. All
yep.
through the years. I mean, I've still got people from 20 years ago I'm still in touch with. And I think it's really useful because it's amazing how many times somebody will come to an event like 5 years later. Maybe they go to one event, they'll come to another 5 years later, or maybe they never came to an event and they will. I think that long term is definitely worth spending some time on. I think as well.
It is, and it's hard. It's again. I think this is one of the things that people just get absolutely 180 degrees wrong about selling. Like the selling's not about applying pressure, right? Selling's not about trying to trick someone into buying something. Selling's problem solving. It's trying to figure out, what does this person need? Am I the right solution for them? Am I not right? Is it the right time for them? Is this important enough? Is this a priority? Like it's all these kind of things to figure out. But if you are taking an owner mindset of, hey, I'm building this thing for the long term, right? You don't need to burn the. We're not, this is not in the 1950s. We're not going town to town selling aluminum siding, and we're tricking suckers into buying our thing and moving on to the next town with no plan on coming back ever again, right? The internet is actually our worlds are tiny corners of the internet most of the time, and you're going to run into these people over and over again. And so if you're building your business for the long term, deliver value. They'll come back, and it's hard to bank on that, right? It's hard to go get a business loan on. Hey, I'm goodwill, obviously, but if you're not thinking of the short term, then I think it's absolutely the way to build. And I do it today. I have people that weren't a good fit, 2-3 years ago, and whatever my offering was, my offerings changed, they've changed, things have changed, and they will come back and say, okay, I think I'm ready now. Let's talk, right? And so, but that doesn't happen if I push, because then I'm a nuisance. Now I'm getting I go into the do not, the ignore pile, right, rather than the value pile. So
sure, cool. So. Yeah, loads of great information there, Damian. So I guess sales, I mean, like I mentioned before the podcast, all kinds of people listen to this, but I think, mostly I'd say it's people running small conferences, large meetups, some training events. Probably conferences is the most common thing here, and I mean, most people listening to this will have figured out some sales because they've run an event, I'm keen to know if you've just got any kind of fundamentals with selling for events, what you've seen. Obviously, you've got attendees and you've got sponsors or exhibitors. Typically, you need the attendees to get the exhibitors, so you've got to focus on the attendees. Like, do you have anything you've seen with events of kind of just, I don't know, an anecdote or anything you've seen kind of work?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I will say, that looking through the lens of my specialty is B2B, so I can help more on the sponsor side probably than the selling direct ticket side. But what I say is overall that I'm an event.
It can be B2B. If you get one company might send 20 people,
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And look, and I mean, I'm an events junkie. I love events. I mean, live, I think it's where I personally enjoy I get the energy, all that kind of good stuff. And so, end of last year when I made some decisions on kind of my business model in a couple of ways and kind of some separation of brands and all kinds of stuff, my business plan for 2020 was, here are the 10 events that I'm either going to speak at, have a booth at, or in some way be more than just an attendee. This is a great plan, all planned out. Of course, that fell to the wayside come February. But so I'm a huge events person. I've attended a lot. And I'll say that, the ones that do the best, like I'm thinking all things are the ones that have clear value propositions. And the value proposition will change, obviously, for the exhibitor versus the sponsor versus the attendee. But the clearer that value prop, the better, right? And and going back to my kind of cardinal rule, my Damianism number one, which is all interest is self-interest, is understanding that how you position that changes. So, if I'm talking to a brand who I'm thinking want to be a sponsor, but who I'm talking to is the brand owner, right? So this is maybe the product manager or the product owner or the marketing owner for that business. Sorry. But whoever that person is, how would they get measured? Like what matters to them, right? Yeah. Is it they've got so much budget they have to spend and they're just trying to find out how to allocate it? Is it they've got a very finite budget and they're trying to find the best bang for buck? Like, how are they going to go back at the end of this and say to their boss, look, I'm a champion, right? I did this great thing. Look at this results we've had. And so thinking of like just empathy, I think is the biggest thing, right? So saying, okay, that's what they want. Now an attendee, what do they want, right? What's a win for them? Is it, they're going to come learn a bunch of stuff? Maybe. Probably not though, right? Probably it's, hey, they're going to make relationships in the hallway. They're going to build either straight up business relationships, personal relationships. Maybe sometimes I think that, one of the soft things that we don't message a lot, but it's true is, they're great, recruiting / job hunting events a lot of times. Let me go see what other cool people in the space that I feel I'm an expert in or that I want to be focused on are out there, right? Let's go start building those relationships. So, focusing on that more than, hey, look, we got Seth Godin to talk. Yeah, cool, awesome, right? And Seth's awesome. I love him, but I can go listen to him anywhere, really. I don't get to go be on stage with him, right? And so I'm not going to talk to Seth in the hallway, right? Probably. So is that the thing I should be selling? Or should I be selling, hey, there's, of the 500 people coming, 20% of them are, CEOs who say they're hiring in the next 12 months. Okay, cool. You know what I'm saying? Like that's that. Now that has some value. So having a real clear understanding of what that attendee wants.
That's something I've often thought, like how you described it very well. Like there's like two sales. There's like presuming the person who's coming, their company is going to, or school in my case, are going to pay for it. There's two sales. One is how can they justify to their whoever they've got? It might be their boss, it might be the marketing budget, how do they justify to go? And secondly, why do they want to go? And in my opinion, more than half of it is just what you said. Probably a lot more than half is they want to network, they want to have a good time. Sometimes they just want to go to a new country and hang out for a weekend and get the company to pay for it,
Well, that's it. I mean, I think, a lot of companies these days, I see that, a lot of hip events do the whole, here's how you convince your boss to say yes, right? Some version of that, right? And it's a clever idea. Because I think that most bosses, including myself, know that conventions, exhibits, these things are very important a lot of times for relationship building, but also they're kind of paid company retreats essentially sometimes too, right? And I think there's benefit to that, right? I mean, I think there's benefit in helping people that work hard to go through it, but having that. It's hard to say, hey, boss, give me, $1,000 for the ticket and, $2,000 worth of travel and expenses, all the rest of it to go do this thing so I can go have a good time for 5 days, right? That's not generally going to get a whole lot of yeses to that. And so you're right. Like you have to figure out who are the stakeholders in that decision and figure out the way to move forward. But, I think there's nothing wrong with, doing that. And then what I would say, one of the things I always see lacking in that whole, hey, here's how you convince your boss to say yes to go to this conference is this idea of goal setting. So, okay, hey, boss, like I'm saying we're going here for this reason. I'm going to network to build relationships. Well, let's set a goal. I need to come back with 3 meetings on the books from potential JV partners or potential clients or potential resellers or whatever your business is, right? However you get measured and saying, hey, here's a finite goal I'm going to set for myself. I do it myself. It's funny. I was going through a lot of my things as I'm doing some rebranding stuff. I found some notes from actually a DCBKK back in 2015, which is like kind of the first time I brought like the whole team with me. Like it was like 4 or 5 people that came, flew into Bangkok. But when we did that, I said, look, in order for this to make sense for the business, here's the goals the business has to have. Yes, we're going to have fun. Yes, we're going to go out, at night and we're going to go out, drink some coconut water and have some, sing Thai and all the rest of that kind of great stuff. But here's the goals, right? We need to leave here with 3, 5-figure opportunities in the pipeline, which means, initial meeting done face-to-face, second call, follow-up scheduled. Here's what else we need to do. We need to add, 50 people to the mail list. We need to have, record 3 podcast episodes with, whatever. So like create a real template of there is work here, right? There is work to be done, but let's focus on the right work. The right work's probably not attend 80% of the calls or meetings or, make sure I'm there for every single, SEO kind of talk or whatever it ends up being. It's more about outcomes that matter to the business. And I would say for me, anyone listening that ever does work for me or works for me now, you want me to say yes, come to me with a plan of here's how I'm going to benefit the business for going. And it's not just the high level, here's who attends, more like here's the finite results we're going to target. And when we come back, we're sitting in the office and we'll see, how'd you do? What's my grade? Did I get an A, a B, a C? Like, what's my grade here for what I did? Okay, cool. You said 4 meetings, you got 3. Okay, not bad, right? But one of the meetings with a bigger company than we expected, fantastic. This is a win. Great.
Yeah.
Now what happens? The next time you come and you say, hey, I want to go on these events, still gonna have to do this process, but I'm gonna be a yes, right? And based on you bringing me a plan. All right. So
yeah, that's great. Do you think as the event organizer, you should be trying to directly or subtly communicate this to the person of the here's some goals you could get, like here are some things people typically get from our event. They get sales leads, they get this. Do you try to guide them on that as the event organizer?
Yeah, I think that again, it's going to depend on the event. The events vary obviously in size and scope and scale and those kind of things. But if I look at kind of people I think just do even like really big events well, I haven't been in a couple of years, but Polizzi from the content marketing, like the content marketing world and all that. So like one of the things that in the early days was that like it was a lot of more like, hey, and this break, I want you to go introduce yourself to someone you don't know. right? And so, so like kind of understanding that we're not all outgoing people, and we're not even outgoing people. Still I have to talk myself into it sometimes, right? And so, but most people aren't like that. So how do you give that how do you direct them to go out and have a result? I mean, again, it's your self-interest is if they have a result, they'll come back, right? Maybe next year they'll bring two of their peers with them, which is great. But I think it does come from a servant mindset. And, one of the things I've changed in the last couple of years has been a much heavier focus on, what we'll call customer success in the startup world. But this is idea that, my goal is to help my customers have success with what I sell them. The more success they have, the faster they see that success, the more likely they are to stay my customers for longer. So there's absolutely a business benefit. There's absolutely a business focus to it, but your mindset shifts subtly. It's not, hey, how do I trick them into staying longer? How do I create a feature stack that kind of locks them in? How do I make the switching costs so high they don't want to switch? So it goes away from tactics and tricks to my focus is on them having success. And if they have success, they stick. If they don't have success, they leave. And that mindset, I think, serves everything: services, product, software, conferences. If your goal is, these are the stakeholders, I got sponsors, I got exhibitors, and I got attendees, or whatever those things are. How do I make sure this persona A has success, persona B has success, and persona C has success? And you test, you experiment, you try new things. But I love the idea. If an event organizer says it from the stage, there's a lot more power from that than just hearing some random guy in a podcast. But I think that as a event organizer, especially if we look now that as we push all these events online, and again, I'm an events junkie, so I've been on a bunch of these. I have not seen, I have not walked away yet from one of these online events saying, that was as close as good as the live event was, right? Yeah. Or, hey, that was worth 100% of my day, right? And because, again, this goes back to, you're still asking for my time and attention. That sale is still happening, right? And so when you're asking for my time and attention, but I get to go meet someone, I get to go sponsor a round of drinks at the bar, right, to loosen people up to talk to me about, that kind of stuff. Like, that value is not being replicated online. Yeah. And so any way I've seen them try to replicate that value, I've not seen successful yet.
Yeah, we talked about this a bit before we started recording, and I guess we run two main types of events apart from the direct Google for Work. We run sort of certification training, and we run kind of conference style events. We call them summits, and we found that we've had some success doing this certification training online, and that's maybe something we should have done earlier. But we've changed the format, whereas before it was a 1 or 2 day course, now we've got 5 or more 2-hour sessions, one a week or whatever, and that's a success. With our summits, our conferences, we just made a decision not to do. Well, we run them every month, but we just do them for free, and then we chop up each of the sessions and put them on YouTube and do some promotion. And honestly, I'm like you. I'm not convinced about online events. I think COVID is going to end eventually. The world will be a bit of a different place, but I don't think it's going to be fundamentally that different. I think people are going to be desperate to get back again. I personally wouldn't sit behind a screen all weekend and watch a conference. So what I would do is I might watch some different sessions at different times, and then I kind of think I can get them on YouTube anyway, and I'm not going to get...
The problem is I mean, I don't know how you break the medium is the problem, right? And so even if I'm mentally prepared, and I have been on several of these, mentally prepared to dedicate the better part of a day, right, and not do anything else, the reality is I'm sitting in front of my computer screen. It is too easy for me to go check mail, to go check into my CRM, to go respond to someone pinging me on Slack, and I try, it's hard. Attention spans are hard. If you're a conference organizer, you know how hard that 9 a.m. session is on day 2, right? The attendance, that's the lowest attendance you have in the whole thing because I went out drinking the night before or whatever. So you think about that now, take that, there's almost a social contract when you're live. People feel a responsibility or guilt of not attending. When you're anonymous on the other side of a screen, that's all gone, right? And so you're really holding their attention is hard. And so I've not seen any medium change that's made this much more engaging. I've seen a lot of them. I've tried, I've been on probably 3 or 4 of these, really people trying to replicate their live event online. And I love online events. I think there's a place for them, but they need to be shorter, pithier, quicker. Value driven, not, hey, here's our 8 sessions back to back for the next 6, 7, 10 hours. So I think you're right. I think, this is obviously a question everyone has to make, but I think that what I'm seeing, the majority of my clients, the majority of people I follow they're doing one of 2 things. They're either doing they're actually just saying, hey, we're going to do this. We're going to do it free, right? We know this is going to be, this is going to be hard to charge for this thing. So we're going to do it free. Or they're just saying, look, we believe a big value prop of this is the ability to do the hallway track, the ability to do the sponsor dinner, the speaker dinner, all this kind of stuff. And so we're just not going to host one this year, right? And so hopefully next year things will get back on track with it. Because as everyone now is caught up with us, everyone's been forced to become a remote employee, right? Everyone's been forced to kind of do this. I think that what you're going to see is the need for in-person is even higher. Like I know for me, I spend all day behind a computer. I crave in-person contact, right? I crave it. Like I need it, right? And so I need that event once a month or whatever that I get on a plane and go see or whatever. So because I spend all day, all week, not talking to people. Sure, Zoom, that's fantastic. I get to see you. That's better than just a phone call, but it's not as good as hanging out, right? And just really being able to break off and kind of connect, in person. And I don't think that's going to go away. I mean, we're tribal for a reason, and a big part of that is just we need that crave that human contact. And so I think that becomes even more important as the new normal will be. I think a lot more people are going to work remote from now on, right? I mean, offices sure will reopen, but they're going to find out, what. I think I'm gonna get it wrong. I think I think it's Pinterest, I think, but some big software company that basically spent $89 million, paid the $89 million penalty fee to get out of their lease early because they've done the math and realized it's still going to save them more money than having 1,000 people in this building and free lunches and car parking and all this kind of stuff.
I heard Twitter will close now. I haven't checked out the software. I heard they were just
too. Yep. Yeah. And I think and obviously the tech always is always the bellwether. They're always the kind of first one. But you're going to find a lot of people that were very, very hesitant to talking about having their people work remotely now realize they're as efficient, if not more efficient, when they can take a mental break and go play with the kids at lunchtime or, and just the 2 hours they're not spending in the car, right? And so things like that. So I think that's going to happen. I think it's going to make in-person even more important from an event organizer point of view. And I think that value prop is going to have to be better defined than I'm defining it right now, but I think that's going to become a selling point. Will be, look, do you are not networking the way you used to. You're not just running into Bob from accounting or Susie from advertising or whatever. And so we're having to create these kind of times for you to mingle with peers and colleagues and customers and that sort of thing. So.
And I think, to be clear, like I don't think we don't blame people for trying it. Especially I know people are really struggling this year, and I know people, they run one conference, a small event, that they're in a community that all their money is from that one conference. I mean, the money might come throughout the year, but if that money goes, that's a year's income, and that's a lot. A lot of people can't handle it. It's tough. People are struggling.
I mean, I had a client who I helped kind of build their sales team, great business, but their entire business was selling, high-end virtual reality equipment to booth exhibitors, right? So all of a sudden their business goes from 7 figures to 0 overnight because events don't exist anymore. So, man, get your hustle on, do what you got to do. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying that I have yet to see the value. And someone prove me wrong.
That's what I say to people. Like I said, I'd love to be wrong about it.
Right.
Just because I kind of chickened out of doing it doesn't mean people can't.
Right. That's it. Just because I don't have the answer doesn't mean there's no answer. I mean, in fact, of course there's an answer, and someone's probably crushing it. And if you are, email me. It's dt@vpsales.co. I'd love to hear how you're doing it because I'm going to steal your idea, give it to everyone else, right? Yeah. So, but no, I don't think it's a matter of like it's wrong. I just haven't seen it effectively done yet. So,
what do you think needs to change, and what's your prediction of when people are going to start meeting? You're like me. I love going to conferences. Even before I run my own, I love it. I like meeting people. I like going to new places. And for me, it's all about the connections and the whole and sometimes the sessions, but usually the connections. But what do you think? When are people going to start? What's it going to take for people?
Yeah, I think it's
normal. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think this is hard not to get into. Everyone's so politicized these days. So I'm going to try to stay as politically neutral as possible on this, right? And especially because I'm in a country right now in America that's very politically divided. Yeah. Here's what I'll say. I think that the introduction of sports here in America, I think has lowered people's guards quite a bit. So I think people are going to start meeting up a lot more pretty quickly now. Whether that's a good or bad thing, I would suggest it's probably not the greatest thing without a lot of protections and not taking it seriously. And so I think it's going to happen. Now, whether that brings a second wave, and I'm not a scientist, I'm not a prognosticator, I don't know. But I will say that me personally, just I'm in Florida, which is a state here in America, which isn't testing very much and is pretty much behind the curve on a lot of stuff and does have we kind of isolated back in February. And, the first 4 or 5 months, I was the only one going out. I'd go grocery shopping, all masked up and come home and do the nuclear shower and the whole thing. And the kids and wife stayed at home. And I'll say that my wife and son are at Target right now shopping. So I've lowered the guard a bit, right? And so figuring out that the new normal means that my 4-year-old can't be inside forever, right? So am I going to ship him off to 8 hours of school every day? No, I'm not going to do that right now. But am I going to let him go with his mother inside a store where he's not touching anything and we're coming home and we're wearing our mask? Yes. And so, I've flirted with the idea of this month being the first time that we hold a Junto again, which is our monthly kind of meetups where we kind of have a small crowd of people saying, hey, if we go and we're socially responsible and we're not hugging and shaking hands and we're wearing masks and we're, isolating to a corner and, we're taking temperatures maybe when people walk in and we're just kind of being good citizens to each other. Do we start small scale testing this? I'll say personally, yes, I'm going to start small scale testing, meeting people again, because my desire for that is high. And so, I'm obviously not giving advice here because, am I wrong? Possibly, but just my mindset's changed. I've changed from a 100% lockdown, going to batten the hatches the whole time to there's something innately human about contact with other people. And I need that. And so I think responsibly, I think is the way to do it. And so that's small crowds, washing hands, wearing masks, whatever. And so we're going to start potentially, maybe this month's a little too quick, so maybe we'll do it next month, but I'm starting to talk to people and I'll say that the attitude of the people I'm talking to is far more open to that now than it was 3-4 months ago. And this is with the understanding of we really haven't solved anything yet, right? So hopefully here in the next 12 months or so, whenever we have got some sort of cure for this, or it'll be even better. But yeah, I think it's going to happen. I think again, personally, I'm going to start doing it. So
and I agree with everything you said. My opinion is, as well, people think people are never going to start socializing like we did. I think that's rubbish.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Memories. People forget pretty quickly.
People are doing it now. People have been doing it the whole time. There's a percentage of the population, and in America, it's probably a third of people that change nothing about their behavior, right? Refuse to wear a mask, are going in marches, are doing all kinds of stuff in big crowds, right? Going to Disney World. I mean, things that aren't necessarily necessary things, but are doing it because to them, their personal freedom is as a priority in their life. Right, their ability to move around. So again, there's no judgment here. It's just, so there are people that are already doing it. So this idea that it's never going to happen, again, the extremes are always where the craziness is, right? So on either end. And so the reality is somewhere in the middle, right? Sure. And so I think that the reality is, people are going to congregate because we need it, and it's part of humanity. It's why we're tribal beings, and some people will do responsibly, some people will be irresponsible, like in all things in life. But I think even responsible people are going to be taking some version of risk. Is there a risk in this? Of course, there's more risk in me going out to meet 7-8 people, even with masks on, there is in me staying home. Yes, that's more risk. Is it a manageable risk? I believe it is, right? Is it a risk I'm willing to take? I'm pretty sure it's a risk I'm willing to take now. But again, your mileage may vary. So
cool. Hey, Damian, really, just final, really quick point, I guess. Look, I want to be respectful of your time. A lot of great stuff. Really quickly, if it is a quick answer, what stage should people start thinking about? We haven't talked about CRMs and automated. Because I got quite what stage should they think about that? Because I got quite an embarrassing confession. We ran, 2019, we did over 300 events, mostly small training events and all kinds of things, a couple of big ones. Well, I don't have a CRM. I don't have any way to track anything, anyone to communicate. I know it's stupid. At what point should people do this from their first event, or should they kind of wing it and just keep a spreadsheet in the beginning, or what stage should they start getting into this?
It's a great question, and none of my answers are ever short, unfortunately. But so I will say that here's how I look at it. I like to think of myself as a very pragmatic. I think my first thing about these answers is I hate pie in the sky, perfect world scenario answers. And so that's not the way the world works. And so generally what I say is this: if it's working for you, I don't care, right? If what works for you, you're the founder, you're doing the selling, you're doing everything else, and spreadsheets and post-it notes and all that are working for you now, awesome, bro. Whatever, that's fantastic. When it's time to move is kind of a couple of things. One is, if you are thinking of having anyone else help on this at any point, you have to have a process that's 80% dialed in or kind of documented in some way. And documentation can be a video, it doesn't have to be like written. But once you're starting to think about inviting other people into that process, I think that's when you start really thinking about having a decent tool set. So we used to call this sales ops in the good old day. Now we're calling it rev ops or revenue operations, which is the idea of these tools and processes that underlie all these kind of things together. And so if you're doing it yourself, it's working, don't change it. The last thing I want to do is come and tell people that they've got to do all this stuff and change it, and it hurts their business. But if you're thinking about adding other people in, you should. If you're having challenges scaling, you should. But also, I think it fundamentally comes from a misunderstanding of what these tools should do. And so a CRM is perfect. So a CRM, I think, is the linchpin for everything on the revenue side of the business. But it's not like the good old days where it was a tool for management to keep tabs on you or to make sure that intellectual property didn't walk out the door. Now it should be an enablement tool. So you shouldn't have to remember what you have to do with each client. Like, hey, I've got to send a proposal here or follow up here. Like your CRM should do that for you. You should have it set up, that you've got a defined process. So really what it does is it removes a necessary part of that memory, that brain RAM you have. So I come in every day and I say, I don't have to remember what I have to do. I've got a list of tasks that I have to do for each account, and they're all in different stages. I don't have to spend any of my time worrying about wondering what I have to do next or worrying that I'm not staying on top of it. So I would say that's kind of, if you are feeling like things are slipping through, if you're not following up the way you should, if there's some gut feeling gnawing at you that, hey, I should be better at this, then you're probably right to start thinking about that. Start with a CRM, start small. Again, don't boil the ocean. You don't have to go crazy. Most of the advice you're going to get is going to be like really third, fourth, fifth level device, which is not where you need to be. The most important thing is have a place where you put everything, right? So all of my sales communication, all of my proposals, all of my follow-up with emails, all that kind of stuff lives in one place, whatever that place happens to be. I've seen people do it with a project management tool. I've seen them obviously with a CRM. I've seen them do it with their own notes folders, whatever. I don't care what system, but start devising a system to take that off of your head so you don't have to remember all the time. I said Post-it notes. Please don't do Post-it notes, but but whatever your digital version of that could be, that's fine. But I will say that I joke about Post-it notes, but one of the things bad habits I break is I'm a note taker. I have been for a long time, and that was physical notes for a long time because I took the physical meetings. The thing is, what happens with physical notes is that you'll turn the page, you'll forget about it. And so you'll have a great notebook full of things to do, but you'll never actually do them because once the page, you're literally turning the page on it and mentally you've turned the page. And so turn that digital notebook, turn that physical notebook into a digital version just helps because you can't turn the page so quickly. And so it's kind of there in front of you. Oh shit, I still got to do that Johnson report or whatever I have to do. So
yeah, great. I saw there's a product people are talking about, like it's actually a notebook which actually digitizes everything. Right. I forgot the name. It looks really cool.
Yeah, I've seen them too. They had great success real quick. They're the ones that they got a lot of buzz now because I think they got turned down. They got laughed on Shark Tank. They went to Shark Tank. Shark Tank told them they're stupid or whatever, but now they're whatever $8 million business, whatever. So yeah, it's great. It's great. And I still take physical notes just because there's a mental connection between my note taking and my brain, right? That I really enjoy. But now how I do that, I finally went ahead and splurged and bought a whiteboard for the office because again, I feel better with a whiteboard marker in my hand. Like it's how I kind of freestyle and how I put ideas together. There's something there, but I know that I've got to turn that whiteboard into something digital in order for it to actually be actioned.
I'm the same with whiteboards. Like the wall opposite me, I put whiteboard paint on the whole wall, and I just use that as a whiteboard.
It helps me just kind of prioritize and kind of systematize ideas, but I know that nothing happens until I turn it into a task in my CRM.
It's true. Damian, look, I want to thank you very much. It's been tons of value, which is the best thing about doing this podcast. Where can people find you online, and who can work with you? Like what sort of people could benefit from a chat with you?
Yeah, so I work exclusively with founders. So founders of B2B companies, either service or software companies, they're looking to scale their business. Historically, what that's been is I've helped people kind of go from 6 figures to 7. These days, the one-on-one work I do is more 7 figures trying to get to 8. So they're ready to start building a team. The primary kind of domain these days is vpsales.co. So you can email me, dt@vpsales.co, @Damian Thompson on Twitter. I am turning Sales Ability, which was historically my coaching company, turning that into a training academy, which I'll have a bunch of training tools for the people that are trying to go from 6 to 7, and be releasing that here in the next month or two with a couple different promotions, some free stuff, some paid stuff, all the rest of it. But just if you reach out to me at dt@vpsales.co, happy to kind of point you in the right direction. No sales pitch, anything like that. The vast majority of people I talk to, are not about sales. I can't help them at that stage. It's just about trying to, a rising tide lifts all ships. And just, I love remote businesses. I love online business. I love that entrepreneurship. And so trying to help our whole industry as a whole rise and point you in the right direction. And so, yeah, feel free to email me. Feel free to reach out to me on Twitter. Either one, I'm pretty responsive on. So.
Cool. Damian, I want a huge thank you for coming and best of luck with the business.
Thanks, man.